Hi, welcome everyone. This is Rami from Peacemakers. Thanks for being on time. Um, I invite anyone that wants to appear on video to turn on your video. Otherwise, it's completely fine to stay without video. Same thing with the microphone as well. Great. Yeah, and I'm seeing more people joining. So thanks everyone. And let's just take a few more moments to let other people join. And as we're waiting, there's actually a big group that signed up for today. Let's maybe take just a minute of silence and just connect with where you are. And if you have a meditation practice, you could meditate together for a minute. And if you've never done it before, you just sit quietly and just tune into what you're hearing, and what your senses are receiving, and the weight of the body on the chair. So what I'll do, just while we're waiting, I'll mute everybody's mics, and we'll start just in a minute. So thank you. And as you're sitting and as we're waiting, notice if the waiting can just be sitting. And if there's anticipation or curiosity in your mind, or you feel that energy in your body, let that just be it. It could be that you're sitting in a private place or you're sitting in a public place. I happen to sit in a place with activity around me, and you may hear it. How is that also being held together? This is part of the Zen Peacemaker. Something that we're really trying to encourage is keeping the center within the activity. Maybe with your next breath, if your eyes are closed, you can open them. If they're open, just look around, take in the faces. Just want to hear from everyone too. Hi, welcome, Tom. And I wanted to welcome everyone to the meeting. We may have more people coming in throughout the hour. That is fine. I'll give a little introduction about myself, Zen Peacemakers, in terms of what you can expect for the rest of the meeting today. And throughout, I'll invite, it could be that at times we will just go back into silence, which is a place we can always come back to, whether we want to just center or just see if there are other questions that come out from that silence. So it's a great resource. I'll also just say thank you for being here, and by registering and signing up and coming online, giving your consent to being recorded. Your questions and what we will say may benefit other members. So keep that under consideration. If you feel you decide to you change your mind, either log off or just don't ask, or don't participate. But by participating, you're giving your consent. So thank you. So, like I said, my name is Rami Fall. I'm the Executive Director of Zen Peacemakers International. And I welcome you to this introductory meeting. Maybe I'll just start with a few words about Zen Peacemakers. There's several people here that I've met already, some people that may be completely new to Zen Peacemakers or to Zen practice in general. So I'd like to welcome you and speak a bit about the legacy that Bernie Glassman, the founder, developed in the last 30 years since Zen Peacemakers started. So I want to acknowledge the lineage and the I'm seeing somebody's sending us messages through the steps. Yeah, so like I said, we're going to record this and the recording will be available to others. So there's no need to record it on your end unless you want to. That's just somebody asked that over the chat. So some of you may know that Bernie Glassman, our founder, who recently passed away in November, was the first successor of Maizumi Roshi, who was a master that came from Japan, holding both Soto and Rinzai lineages and Zen Buddhist lineages. And Bernie was the abbot of Zen Center of Los Angeles for several years. And at some point through his very deep practice and his form of teachings, he had a calling to take the teachings out of the meditation center. Back then, in the early days of Buddhism in the West and in California and the United States, the fascination and the real calling for a lot of practitioners were to come to the center. And he wanted to move that one step towards engagement. So at some point he left UCLA, he came to New York City, he created the community of Zen, New York City Zen community. And immediately started doing what was called street retreats. He started to put together Greyston Mandala, if you're aware of it. It's a whole social enterprise working with the homeless in Yonkers, New York. Mm-hmm. And this was one of his ways of being who he was, a maverick and a trailblazer. And Greyston became a huge presence in Yonkers and New York City in terms of the support it was giving to previously incarcerated people. And the first AIDS clinic was opened by Greyston. And at one point, when he felt that was already moving forward, he decided to move to another direction towards peace building, toward peacemaking, towards creating an international, global sense of Sangha, and working with society's ailments and collective traumas in a new way. So he created the Zen Peacemakers and coined those three principles that he distilled from his 40 years of those times of Zen training and teachings, which are the three tenets. And those are not knowing, bearing witness, and taking action. In a way, those were all of his core teachings. He would constantly come back to them. He could give teachings on them, but then he will always try to empower people to come to their own understanding and their own empowerment and embodiment of them in the world. Not knowing is usually referred to as the freshness, the entry into the spontaneity of the moment. There are myriad ways to do that. Many do that through meditation. Some people do it through prayer, through art, through body practice, sports, through music. Many, many ways to enter this non-dual way of engaging our human experience. Bearing witness is staying in that place, returning. That's the practice of returning into that and not turning away from any component that's being received while being in that place. Sometimes I heard Bernie speak about that bearing witness as a practice of shikantaza if you're a Zen practitioner, the practice of just sitting, just being receptive. And the third tenet is the taking action that comes from not knowing and bearing witness. it's unmitigated, it's unknown, it's creative and fresh, and most of the time it's just connected because it's not based on preconceived ideas and habits and ways of operations. In a way, all of the Zen Peacemakers offerings since then are a result of those three tenets: the bearing witness retreats, street retreats, all the work that we've been doing with the Native American programs, all of the plunges that our members have been doing since in Bosnia, in Rwanda, in Italy, working with refugees, and climate, taking all of these very simple principles into the activity of the world. What happened last November in 2017 is that we relaunched what Zen Peacemaker was for the last 25 years into what we call now Zen Peacemakers International, which is really this wide prism of looking at our Indra's net, this net of practitioners who resonate with these teachings, and really coming to embody that through that global connectivity. So even now, when we're seeing each other's faces on the screen. We may not know yet where people come from, and we'll have a chance to share that in a moment. But try even just to hold, while you're listening, the appreciation that we're literally talking from different places around the planet. The sun and the moon are part of this conversation, and they are in different constellations around the planet right now as we're talking. We have different senses of time, of day. Some of you may have a nighttime. Some of you may have nighttime. Some of you had a different meal just taken. So all of this is kind of like letting us develop that sense of interconnectedness around the planet. So this is really one way that we wanted to regroup Zen Peacemakers International. I'm hearing that there's people are hearing some background noise. So what I'll do is I'm just going to keep the microphone closer to my mouth, and hopefully that will be clearer. And what I'll do is when you guys speak, I'll mute myself. This is as the quietest place that I could find, but I'll take that into consideration for next time. So thanks so much for that feedback. So that's just a little bit about Zen Peacemakers, about Bernie. I would love to, speak about myself and how I got involved with this, but I would love to, at this point, just head it off to you and maybe just do a quick round. We have 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8, including me. And then we'll, by the way, if any of you wants to ask a question while I'm talking, that's completely fine, putting that in the chat. I'll go through that in a bit when we open that to the questions. So feel free to just use the chat feature for that purpose. So just for the next step, I'll just love to invite you, just your voices into this meeting. Maybe you can just say your name, where you're calling from. Maybe just let's take 2 minutes each to just hear a bit about what got you interested in this and being on the call. And then we'll have an open floor for questions and answers, so we'll have time to delve into more details. So maybe I'll just call on people's names. Let's start with Catherine, please. By the way, if you do not want to speak, that's completely fine. I'll just say pass and we'll move on. Catherine, please.
Hello, everyone. My name is Catherine, and at this moment, I'm sitting in Tenerife, Spain, but I live in Pagosa Springs, Colorado. And it's kind of interesting. I'm here because I'm attending a Tibetan Buddhist retreat, but this particular teacher died in September. And it was actually Bernie's death in November. It was really, I knew nothing about Zen Peacemakers until he died. And it was just this spontaneous curiosity. Who was he? What happened? And so a friend of mine sent me the links from Roshi Joan Halifax. She had these retreats from Bernie Gossman's time down there. And I listened to every single one. And from that moment on, I just said to myself, I'm ready. I mean, I don't know the avenues through Tibetan Buddhism, through Vajrayana Buddhism to be socially engaged. But this is so true to me, the Zen Peacemakers and what you're doing just rang of such a deep truth that I just had to become a member, and I'm here, and that's all I know.
Great. Thank you so much, Catherine. Just as all of you will speak, I'll already have things that I would pick up on, and maybe I'll speak on when we open it up. So I wouldn't respond to each one of you directly right now after you speak. Right now, we will just go ahead and just hear from everyone, and then we'll kind of dive more into the subjects. Tim, go ahead.
Okay, can you hear me? Great. So my name is Tim Harrison. I'm sitting in an office building at Emory University in Atlanta, Georgia. And I work for a Tibetan, culturally Tibetan man here, Geshe Lobsang Tenzin Negi, who's a professor and in religion, and has created a secularized compassion training program called Cognitively Based Compassion Training, which I direct many of our programs in that system. But before I began doing this interesting practice 6 years ago, I practiced Zen with a teacher in North Carolina from the mid-90s. And in recent years, have discovered Roshi Joan Halifax, her writings, and her ability to connect the Tibetan emphasis on compassion and engagement with mindfulness, which my Zen practice, I would call, was primarily focused on equanimity over compassion. So this has all come together for me, and I've done several retreats at Upaya with Roshi Joan, and last summer had the opportunity to do a street retreat in Philadelphia with the Joshin Burns. So that was my first plunge with the Zen Peacemakers, and I continue to be very moved and inspired by this practice. And so nice to be here and meet you all. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Tim. George, go ahead.
Hello, everyone. I'm George Gallagher in Phoenix, Arizona. I was drawn to Zen Peacemakers through Bernie's passing and the many and very praises of his life. So I'm very glad to be here. And my interest is in socially engaged Buddhism. Thank you.
Thank you, George. Anim, please.
Hello, everyone. My name is Anim. I'm sitting here in, this is a room at a local dojo, an Aikido dojo. So I practice Aikido in Rhode Island, in the US. And we also are a Zen community. So I've been practicing Zen and Aikido for about 4.5 years now. And briefly I did a Zen retreat in Seattle with Genjo Roshi, which I believe he's a friend of Bernie's. So somehow I'm pretty sure through social media, I learned about Bernie and the Zen Peacemakers. And I listened to some of the podcasts. something about it, especially when I hear Bernie talk, connects with me. And I'm drawn to the idea, and I'm not quite sure yet what I'm drawn to. And certainly there's a part of me is very interested in social engaged Buddhism. And I do not yet know what engagement means for me. So it's quite exciting for me to start this. I feel I'm starting this process very early. Don't know much yet about how this is going to express itself for me. And I think that's very interesting, and that's why I'm here.
Great, thank you, Anim. Bodhivata,
Yeah,
go ahead.
Namaste, everybody. My name is Bodhivata. I'm in Brooklyn, New York. I've been a Buddhist meditator for 38 years. My root teacher is the great Master Thich Nhat Hanh, who I continue to follow. Some time ago, I was speaking to someone online about Bernie's philosophy, and I was deeply touched by his incredible level of compassion for the world at large that attracted me very much. As a follow-up to that, I was in a search of a local Sangha, and someone recommended me the Lotus Zen Temple here in Brooklyn, which I visited, and since then I've been going regularly and getting more accustomed to the Zen aspect of Buddhism, which I find very fascinating. My primary draw is connected to the earth. I am very much in a love affair with Mother Nature in all her expressions. I find her to be my most powerful teacher ever and healer. It has not happened once, but several times that when I was experiencing impermanence of my body in the form of some ailments, that I would go for a walk in the woods or just sit in front of the ocean, meditate, do some breathing exercises, and suddenly find totally ill. The more I got interested into Bernie's work, the more obviously I got to read about him and his ideas, and the more I got fascinated by the wonderful soul this man had. I am very honored to be here with you today, and I thank you all for receiving me. I lost you, Rami.
Thank you, Bodhivata.
Yeah.
What?
Kyosui, please.
Well, I mean, I think on the positive side, the last
Go ahead.
this year.
Hi, I am Ko Shui. I come from Erling, Iowa. That's southwest Iowa, close to the Missouri River. And I have been practicing meditation and various spiritual practices for a good portion of my life. Lately, I have been drawn to, I say lately, it's probably the last 5 years, more into Buddhism. I tend to have a base practice of Soto Zen, but I'm not limited to any one tradition. I especially now am getting more and more drawn into Thich Nhat Hanh's work. what brought me to Zen Peacemakers is a member of one of the online sanghas, Zen Studies Sangha, just got us involved. And this sounded like a good opportunity to further my practice in compassion. I especially have an interest in the virtual world and how can we promote compassion and other peacemaking activities within that. A great avenue yet to explore. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Koshri. Welcome. I'm seeing somebody without a video that their name is Home. If you wish to speak, I unmuted you now. Hi, so I'm seeing the last person has their name Home, and I can't see the video. So if you wish to speak, you have the mic now. Otherwise, we'll move forward.
All right, I'll reach out to Laura.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Bodhivata. Thanks for joining us. So I'll be moving on. I see the last person may not want to speak, which is fine. If you change your mind, what you can do is raise your hand. There's a hand raising feature. Or you can just chat it in and I'll call on you. Okay. Thank you so much. Just weaving all of these things that I've heard, and also returning a bit to that silence, to where everything find its own place. You know, before I speak about the many threads that were open up here, maybe I'll just speak about myself, because just listening to all of you reminds me so much of my journey, my way of coming to this place. I'm calling from New York City. This is where I'm at right now. And originally I'm from Israel. I was born there 40 years ago. I'm not far from Tel Aviv, in a pretty secular suburban community. I grew up wanting to be an artist, and that was my vocation, vision, calling. And I wanted to do it in New York, and I did it. And there was one day where I was basically acknowledging that I was living my dream and I was still very unfulfilled. That's where I found Buddhist practice. I was looking for different things, and it opened up for me very quickly, very fast. I was fascinated by the teachings, by the lineage, by the everything that was offered. And I practiced with the Mountains and Rivers Order in upstate New York. I was a resident at their monastery for 2 years in a cloistered monastic training, and 2 more years at a temple training. So did a lot of what's called like formal, Zen training, and found it completely life-changing. So I acknowledge that has to be a central part of my life. I also acknowledge that my art, the art that I was doing before all of this, was in a way access for me to a lot of the same insights that I would encounter in my practice. being in the moment, my relationship with my mind, thoughts, and my body were first accessed through my art making. At some point, my calling simply brought me into more wish to be engaged in the world. And I left the monastery, and one of the first things I did was finding the retreat in Auschwitz, because I read Bernie's books. Bernie was a Dharma brother of my teacher at that time. And here was this Jew from Brooklyn who was a Zen master and was kind of like in my family, but he was doing something very different from what I thought practice was. So very quickly, I signed up, I went there, and that retreat was so transformative to my own life, to my own practice. I was so impressed and just changed by the methodologies and the practices that they did there that I didn't conceive as part of what Zen practice can be in terms of engaging with others, the relationality with others, the encouragement of sharing. We have a practice called counsel, which is a core practice in the Zen Peacemakers. The whole plunge of Auschwitz, which means plunging into parts of my karma, was life-changing. My grandparents from both sides are Holocaust survivors, and I accessed parts of me that I haven't ever accessed before. And the sense of wholeness, just in terms of me holding myself, my mind, my experience of me, and my experience of my connection with others was tremendously changed. So I wanted to be involved, and one thing led to another. I became Bernie's attendant for a few years, and following his stroke in 2016, I took on this role as the executive director. And some of you spoke about Bernie. I really feel I've had a privilege and real privilege to work with him very closely in the last 5 years of his life, and I'm tremendously grateful for him and see this as part of the continuation of his vision. He would often share with me that he wanted to have some kind of a way to connect with technology with members around the world. And that was, 15 years ago, and technology was not, Facebook wasn't created yet, neither Zoom. And now technology caught up with his vision. So we're able to do a lot of what he wanted. So that's a little bit about me. I'm happy to answer any other questions about that. But I think I heard there's a lot of themes that came up from others. So I want to speak a bit about some of the themes that I've heard you speak. Some of you mentioned other teachers and other lineages that you either practice in or other centers that you practice with. Some of you mentioned some teachers. Genjo Oshi from Seattle is a good friend. We just spent November together in Poland. We spent time in the Native American Black Hills retreat together. We spent time in Bosnia together. So Genjo is a good friend. John Halifax, of course, is a good friend. I also wanted to mention Kyosui mentioned the Zen Studies Sangha, which is an international studies Sangha in the Sudal tradition, and they just recently completed becoming an affiliate group with Zen Peacemakers. So it's just another way that our network is collaborating and connecting. And I'll speak more about that, about the affiliates, about rooms, what that means. But having Tom here with us is a wonderful example of us coming into relationship between communities. So I welcome Tom and appreciate that connection. Some of you mentioned either practicing or being parts of other faiths or other streams within Buddhism or even within Zen. That was a key part in Bernie's vision and how Zen Peacemakers was first conceived. So Bernie would be very proud about his Sufi successors and his Jewish successors and his Jesuit successors, something that he got a lot of flack from, different Buddhist factions because it was so unusual to do what he did. He was friend and he taught with Trungpa Rinpoche, the founder of Shambhala, and a great teacher, really one of the greatest teachers of the 20th century. We have many members and groups that are connected with us who practice whether within the Vipassana or Insight groups or Shambhala, or the different Sodot lineages. And I think this is really important. Maybe I'll speak about the affiliates a little bit here, that the way that we come to connection with different groups is really based on the relationship and the mutual relationship between us. We're not entering a franchise agreement. We're not entering any kind of Zen Peacemaker is not involved in governance or the finances of the group that is affiliated. This is really just an affinity of spirit. There's a sense of like, yeah, we're going towards the same direction together. We both value the three tenets, the Bernie's teaching, the Zen Peacemaker's teachings, and we want to see what we can create together. That's kind of like the larger picture. In practicality, what Zen Peacemakers International offers all of these affiliates, and this is something that the Zen Studies Sangha, for example, will start benefiting, and any other group that is formally affiliated with us, is because we have such a big international reach, we are offering our outreach, our social media to our affiliates, and we promote their programs. When Tom's group will be doing 20 meditation videos online, or if they're doing any study, a text study, and they will have an opportunity to both post it on our membership platform, and this is where you signed up for this meeting. That means that all the members all over the world can see those offerings and sign in to them. And we, as from Zen Peacemaker staff, we use our all of our exposure media and platforms to promote this work. So they get a lot of exposure, the affiliates. And what from Zen Peacemakers side, what we're trying to really create is really the largest worldwide movement that we can. And we hope that relationality and that mutuality will translate into growth of membership, and also the opening up of the silos of the community. I've spoken with members of Zen Peacemakers from prominent centers that have been affiliated with the Zen Peacemakers for a long time, and I've heard members being surprised that there are Zen Peacemakers in other countries. They just thought that it's their group, their training center where they are is who Zen Peacemakers were. And when I told them, no, we got members in Belgium, in Switzerland, in Australia, their eyes just got big because the family just got bigger. So this is really part of that sense that we're trying to invoke. And also as we start sharing about, the social action challenges that we meet or the ways that we meet them, there's a tremendous benefit on seeing how other people from different languages, from different countries, from different cultures treat things. I've had a conversation with a member in Australia where I had to remind myself at first that this person is from Australia because he was speaking English. He was Caucasian white, so it seemed like he was either American or British. And they happened to be an LGBTQ activist, and they said, when I speak with activists from the United States, for example, even though we speak English, our whole terminology around the language around LGBTQ is different. The whole expression of coming out of the closet, for example, that doesn't necessarily apply there. They don't use that sort of terminology. They have a different terminology. So there's many ways that we can also find how we take things for granted, even as we try to heal the world and invoke compassion, just by the words and language that we use. And being exposed to an international community can really bring this up, and it kind of gets us out of the box. So that's another thing that we're really trying to promote. One way that this is the easiest way for all of you to continue enjoy that is using the many cluster meetings that we're doing almost every week now. Those cluster meetings are mostly organized around callings. I call them callings, but they're how people identify whether peace builders or organizers or humanitarians. And we come on a meeting, there's certain guidelines, and we connect on both the work that we do, but also what motivates that. And those are wonderful ways to meet more members, get more connected. Even if you don't necessarily resonate with the subject, just come on board. At the end of the day, those are just really just ways for us to connect. So I really invite you to do that. And maybe just one more word about the groups that you are already maybe members of or practice with, because we're looking at this from 20,000-40,000 feet in terms of the internationality of the Sangha. We also recognize that it's important. There is no global without local. We cannot disconnect. It creates a disconnection. We actually have to develop wholeness throughout the whole vertical ladder of connection: the personal, the close by, the interpersonal, the local, and then the global. So if you're already part of your groups, Zen Peacemakers International is not intending on replacing that. It's about complementing that. It's adding that level of connectivity that you may want to develop or plug into. So I think I said a lot up to here. I'm happy to go back into silence a bit, and if anybody has anything to say, please feel free to raise your hand, and I'll call on you. Another way to ask a question, you can always just put it in the chat, and I'll respond to it there. George, I saw your hand.
Thank you, Rami. There are online other groups of Buddhists, I guess Mahayana, Theravada, and Zen, that also have a focus on social engagement. And I'm wondering, should we send an email to you with that organization's name? Thank you.
Great, thanks, George. Just to clarify, are you asking about the possibility of collaborating or coming into touch, or just bringing in the action to a collective action? Is that what you mean?
Directly along the lines of what you described as reasons for affiliating.
Yeah.
So a small group, I think is called One Earth Sangha, for example, the Bhikkhu Bodhi's group. Other people have talked to Thich Nhat Hanh or Day, that they're socially engaged. Now, there's also Zhu Chi and many Zen groups that practice bodhicitta. So it is a collaboration of local groups. Thank you.
Great, thanks, George. Great question. Yes, yes. Part of what ZPI is intended on is exactly that, in terms of growing that network of connectivity, literally as an expression and as an embodiment of that interconnected network. Indra's net, we call it in in the teachings. So part of my job is to exactly do that. So on a regular basis, daily basis, I'm in touch with many groups in many places around the country and the planet, and exploring our coming together. I literally had a conversation Friday with a potential group in Australia that was interested in becoming an affiliate. I'm in constant connection with other groups. If you are part of a group, any of you, if you are part of a group and you would like to suggest it, yeah, we can start a conversation offline, one-on-one, and we can explore that together. There's a whole document that I can share with you, and if you need to bring it up to your board of directors or your co-leaders or the decision makers in your group, I can forward that to you, and then I can be in touch with them, and I'm happy also to talk to them. So yes, this is a big part of our strategy and a big part of what I do. Yeah. Some of them reach out to me, and some of them I notice and I find them one way or another, and I reach out to them and I say, hey, I'm curious if there's a place to explore a relationship. So again, like, I'm bringing it back to the relationship level. This is not just about strategies. This is not just about, membership. This is all just really about affinity and connecting. I also want to acknowledge that because Bernie has been around for so long, and his network of influence is so vast, that there's been groups that's been connected with Zen Peacemakers for the last 30 years, and they're all over. Some of them are less related with us just because they haven't maintained a sense of relationship or connection like I described, and some of them do. So part of also what I do now is I'm working with all of these groups and seeing if there's energy or momentum to develop that. So I just want to acknowledge, with Bernie's passing and also just the last 5 years, is we're in transition. Zen Peacemakers in transition, and really acknowledging the time of the community right now. So Zen Peacemakers International is intended on offering this as vastly as possible. So I'm happy to hear more now, or take it offline and talk either on phone or on emails if any of you want to talk about that more. This is also where right now you're talking to me as individual members, but this is also where members can become liaisons or representatives, or work with me as part of affiliates. So this is another way to be engaged as a member. I can speak more about that. Yeah. Thanks, George. Yeah, Catherine, please.
My question may formulate as I start to talk. I'm not necessarily affiliated with, I'm part of many different Dharma groups. I'm not here to represent them at this time. I'm here because I feel a personal calling, and I really feel called to, one, I know participating in bearing witness retreats. And I have a background with group work, doing a large amount of group work, and I feel a little interest in supporting, facilitating. I'm not even sure what words you use on your end for being present to supporting groups through bearing witness retreats. And I don't know what that entails. I don't know if there's training. I think Bernie talked a little bit about some kind of training for bearing witness retreats, but I'm not even sure I fully understood it. So I don't know if you could elaborate on anything around where my passion is kind of calling. And also I have a question, because I'm not a Zen practitioner, and as another person said, I'm very open to many traditions. You know, I remember hearing Bernie say at one point, he's pretty much a Zen guy, you know, and I'm pretty much a Vajrayana person. But that doesn't mean I don't love Sufism and Hinduism and other traditions and Zen Buddhism. But I'm not part of a Zen group right now. So I'm just kind of exploring that too, as how, if that would impact my, my heart's calling towards the bearing witness retreats. And obviously it seems like participating in them should not be a problem, but I don't know about going any further what that would be like. And maybe I just take it one step at a time. So I could be answering my own questions right now. I don't know, but does that make sense?
Beautiful. Let me just see that I heard you well. So I heard three main pieces of your question. First, I was just, if I go backwards, you were asking about not being, identifying as a Zen student or a Zen practitioner. Would that affect your ability to relate and to practice and benefit from this group? So that's one question. The other question was around simply about bearing witness retreats, because I haven't spoken more about that, so this is just a nice way for me to talk about it a little bit. Third one, we were asked about training and possibly participating and facilitating in those retreats. So those are the three things I heard.
Yes.
Great. Is there anything that I missed?
No.
Okay, great. Okay, so maybe I'll start with the easier one. Interfaith. Like I said, interfaith was a big part of Bernie's wish to make this offering available. I'm wearing a yarmulke. I'm Jewish, so when I meditate, I wear a talit. You know, a Jewish prayer shawl. Sometimes, you know, with my raksu, sometimes without my raksu. A raksu is a, when you take Buddhist vows, that's what you have on. That's the robe, that's the prayer shawl of Zen Buddhists. So, you know, so there you have it. See, so this is definitely, this is so inherent in how Bernie wished us, his students and his followers, to see our lives, because we see the whole thing, right? The whole encouragement is to be whole. And if we have parts of us, all of them are included, including the Jew, including the Buddhist. And how I develop a life, right? This is where he had this whole teaching about the soup and being a cook of your life. So how do I create a soup that includes all of these ingredients? So that's up to me, and it's a very empowering practice, because I need to just constantly take inventory and see what is important to me, and not necessarily exclude one to another. There's maybe a prioritization, but they're all included, and that is also expressed in all of the bearing witness retreats. And ideally, everything that we do tries to come up from that attention to as many aspects of things as we can. This is really one of the core basics ways that we plan plunges and bearing witness retreats. You know, so that's maybe a nice segue to talk about the bearing witness retreats. So our office, in terms of myself and our staff, Zen Peacemakers International, we offer two main retreats during the year. One is the Auschwitz retreat. It's a week-long, five night in Poland, in Auschwitz-Birkenau camp. And the other one is a Native American program that we've been doing for the last 4 years. both of them are wonderful ways to kind of jump into the embodied practice of the three tenets, because we don't talk about them that much. We don't teach about them as much. We do them in many different ways. We have a whole container that's developed for people to just experience it in a way. And this is where I would love to weave that into a word that you used, Catherine. You used the word, Vajrayana practitioner. Often that's referred to, the third of the three vehicles, the three kind of streams and mainstreams in Buddhism. Zen is often associated with Mahayana, but it also has a Vajrayana piece. This is where Zen Peacemakers, and this is more my opinion as a practitioner, the Zen Peacemaker is really a Vajrayanic experience. It's really encouraging me to enter the world as the enlightened, awakened reality. That all the capacities and all the skills and all of the traits and characteristics of the enlightened Buddhas and the 5 Buddha families and all of that is present with me right now. All I need to do is either invoke or just experience it. And this is a way that Bernie really wanted us to stop waiting. Stop waiting to fulfill your practice. Stop waiting to be in a certain level. Engage the world with the full capacity, knowing that you're a Buddha. So that's if you see that as an encouragement or as an invitation. I personally see this way. So this is often when I talk about our practice in practice terms, I talk about it that way. It doesn't exclude my need to go and meditate for a week once in a while, right? I need to work on my own practice in that way, concentrated way. So part of also what Zen Peacemakers are looking at is how are we offering a balance of trainings and offering a balance of activities that cater both. But most of the activities that we inherited in terms of the Auschwitz retreat, the Native American program, the plunges, the street retreats, all of those are plunging activities, which means that you're completely immersed in that reality. The Native American retreat is more of it's kind of like a camping trip. We go camping for 5 days, but we're hosted, and it's all co-led with our Lakota hosts. And we really let them lead us, and they let the spirit lead us. We really practice not knowing. We have a certain itinerary how we're going to go, and usually we plan to visit memorial sites and sacred sites circling the Black Hills. That's the plan for these 3 years. So this is the 2nd year in this plan, but that can change, and at some point spirit calls somewhere else and we're going there. So it's a real plunge into not knowing, being very spontaneous, and really being receptive to the land. Someone mentioned that here before, so the land is a big piece of this. As in Auschwitz. In Auschwitz, the camp itself, the land is the teacher. We don't give Dharma talks in Auschwitz. Nobody stands forward and speaks of that. The place gives rise to whatever insight and wisdom comes through us during that week. I'll say briefly that these are the main 2 retreats that we plan and roll out and organize for our members, and also non-members. Some people who maybe have never been affiliated with Zen Peacemakers come on these retreats. There is no requirements to be Buddhist. There's no requirement to have a spiritual practice. The requirement is a calling, and this is something we only we have access to, is a calling. And usually I speak with people and they will say, I wanted to come for the last 15 years. Something held me back, but this time I'm coming. So that's the beginning of any conversation I have with people who are interested in either of those retreats. And like I've said before about wanting to bear witness to all aspects of narratives, we're really trying to bring all aspects of the known narrative, we call it, to there. So we have had obviously, descendants of survivors like myself. We've had descendants of SS officers who have a very unique and very important experience to share, and to be born witness to, because there isn't a lot of places where they can be seen in their own karma. And it's a very difficult karma. It's important for us to bring also Muslims to that camp, because Muslims also died there. It's important for us that there's a LGBTQIA representation there, because gay people died there, and trans people died there, and people on the spectrum that were not outed even. And we're trying to really be aware of what it's like to, people who have not been outed. They're not even know where they should be, whether they should be in the women's barracks or the men's barracks. That sense of self-identity that hasn't been resolved yet, and how many of us are experiencing that right now. So it's so important that that's represented there too. It's so important for me was when we had African American and Native American participants in that retreat, because that's where the people's narratives of suffering gets woven. And when I was present in Auschwitz with a Native elder, and he dedicated a prayer to my grandparents, and I'm talking about a Lakota elder praying for my Hungarian Jewish grandparents, I'll tell you that tactile feeling of the fabric of our humanity was so pronounced. And I just simply cannot give that a better word, because there was a sense of connection there that was across cultures, across language. I could not understand a word in Lakota that he prayed in. But he was praying for my grandparents. So when I go to South Dakota, and when we do our programs there, and when I pray, I bring with me my lineage there, and the people's bearing witness to each other. And my ancestors are bearing witness to his ancestors. It's powerful stuff. I'll say it very mildly. And when you start experiencing that in Bosnia and in Rwanda, that sense of connection is becoming really, really unique. And there's not a lot of opportunities to feel that. One aspect you asked about the facilitation in these groups, this is something that we're looking at. There is an intention probably in the next few years to roll out a formal training in terms of how we bring people into our fold in terms of staff and facilitators. That's not, we're not ready to launch that, but really the way that's been happening is that there's been we've recognized a core group of people who just simply been returning year after year, and they have a personal calling both to the place, particularly in Auschwitz, to serve there. That's how I got involved. I just wanted to come back and keep serving there and make sure that this retreat is being maintained for future generations. And some people are just more able to be really dedicated full-time. So we have a full-time staff, and this is a very small group. But that means also that they're really available at a moment's notice to serve the retreat. So that's one group. Another group is the council facilitators. And what I mentioned, the council practice is the sharing circle practice that we facilitate every day. And we have a group of facilitators, again, who's just been showing dedication. And those are full-time participants. That means that they're coming on their own means and resources. But they offer facilitation during their retreat. We offer them special trainings before and after the retreat. We give them a little bit of professional training around that. And this is just a result of longevity and affinity. People have just been working with us for a while. I would call it like the core leadership of what we call the spirit holders. These are the people who, all of them have been successors of Bernie and have been coming to Auschwitz for the last at least 20 years, if not all of those 23 years. Some of them have led retreats in other bearing witness retreats. So those are what we call the spirit holders. And this is a more of a unique group that is assigned by the board, and we're also looking at how that group is being chosen. So, like I mentioned before, we're in transition. In the past, Bernie, as the founder and as the CEO, was kind of like leading, helming the whole boat, and now we're finding ways how to empower the community and move to this new chapter. So I would just say, yeah, one step at a time sounds great. I would just say, just come and see how that even works for you. You know, if the group works for you, if the process works for you. And I would just say, you know, if any of you is interested to come, we usually encourage people to come for the first time, really as participants, with really not knowing mind in terms of what you may be able to offer. Some people ask about wanting to offer cantorship, singing, prayer. Some people want to offer recant. So we usually encourage people to just come as a participant, not take on any other responsibilities, because it's a very powerful experience. So even as I went for the first time, it was a very powerful retreat for me in terms of what it did to my system. And the moment that I started to take more responsibility in terms of the management and the organization of the retreat, it was a whole other thing. It was a whole other thing, because then I had to also hold space. I had to take care of all of those circles of staff, facilitators. Obviously, my role was very unique because it was really taking care of the whole retreat, but any added responsibility, I think at least for the first time, can create a bit of distance. So I would really just encourage, just come, just plunge. And who knows, you know, really go with it.
Thank you so much.
Sure, thanks, Catherine. Is there anything from my answer that didn't fully respond to yours, or if you'd like me to elaborate on anything?
No, it's very clear and thorough. Thank you. The only thing I would say is, where can I find out about the dates for like the Native American plunge coming up this year? I couldn't seem to find it. So.
Yeah. So that would happen in the week of July 15th to 21st. It's not going to happen this whole week. It's not the whole week,
okay.
But that's the week where it will be. Usually it goes for 4 nights. One of the reasons we haven't published it yet is it's in development, and part of the nature of this particular work, for example, and that's an example for us as organizers, you know, to really embody the 3 tenets as we do it, is that we're working with our host, the Lakota hosts, and we really don't impose our own schedule and our own task list and to-do schedule on them. So it's a real co-leadership experiment, and with a lot of consideration to that. So we're letting things change a lot, and we're aware that, you know, there is a possibility that may shift. So that's why we haven't published it yet. But that's kind of like that's what's on our schedule right now. We'll definitely open it by March. So by March, registration will be open. Yeah, and feel free to either always reach out to me directly, or look at our website, or any of our online Facebook or platform to learn more. Then you can also always just email me directly. I'll be happy to connect.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it very much.
Well, I also think like this is something that you present
Yeah, so we still have, you know, about 20 minutes open to questions. We can also just come back to our belly, just breathe a little bit, see what comes up. It could be also that it's not a technical question or question about offerings. Maybe it's just a reflection, or if there's anything else that moves through you. Maybe just where you are, just a quick check-in. How are you feeling? Tom, I see your hand. Go ahead.
would like more information about council. I haven't found it yet on the website. Where would I find it on the website? I read better than I hear.
Got it. Thank you. Great point. I'm feeling both surprise and regret that you couldn't find it on the website. That I'll make sure that it's easy to find. Part of what we're doing, we're kind of collecting all of the resources that we have right now into one easy place to look at. So it seems like that hasn't happened with council yet. So I'll make sure that that's available. So I invite you to come online in February. I can tell you right away. Hold on.
Oh, I'm signed up for that.
You're signed up? Okay, great. So in February, there's a members council. That's a great way to just practice it. I mean, I can talk about council, but it's great to just, like I said, just plunge in. It's facilitated by people who have long time been facilitating with us. Most of them have been on the Auschwitz retreat. That's just how they develop their skills. So yeah, just come on board and you'll learn the council guidelines and you'll experience it. Yeah, I can say a little bit about it. That it's a practice that's been developed by the Ojai Foundation in California, and they have been adjusting different Native American circle practices that they inherited from that location, from the natives of that location. So it's very important to acknowledge that in terms of the practice, the origins of that practice. And it's practiced usually in person, in a circle. There's a talking piece that is being passed around, and that gives the person who holds it to share from the heart, and everybody else listens. It's a wonderful way to really bring meditation practice into relationality. It's a really wonderful first step into learning to sit zazen, right? Actually bring that practice into being fully sensory open to what you hear, what you feel, and be connected with what people are actually saying. So we're not just hearing sounds and seeing visions, we're actually feeling and connecting in a human way to other people. So it's a very wonderful way to bring practice into the world, into the connection out of our inner experience of meditation, if it is inner. It's a wonderful practice. I can speak more about it. I'm very passionate about it. I love facilitating it. Like I said, we practice it in all of our programs. If there's any particular question about it, I can speak more about it. Otherwise, I'll just invite any of you to sign up to that meeting. By the way, any of the cluster meetings that you see on the calendar, most of them are councils also. So if you want to just join those, that will be a practice of council as well. And I usually facilitate those. Yeah. Tom, did that answer your question, or is there any other thing you'd like to ask about?
That answers my question. I don't have more questions at the moment. Great.
And again, always feel free to write me directly. I'll be happy to answer any questions over email. It's totally fine. Thanks, George. Another thing I want to offer, just because I did hear other people speak about their own communities, one thing that I offer personally from my role, and I've had several communities who invited me to do that. So I've had both groups from the Insight Society, the Vipassana tradition, and from Shambhala tradition to come talk, just in terms of bringing not just Bernie's lineage and teachings and the three tenets, but also just kind of bringing or jump-starting a conversation around social action and how the Zen Peacemakers teachings can empower community in doing that. And that's wonderful. So I met with those sanghas. It was just like a questions and answers sessions. I spoke a little bit like I did now, and I basically did what I'm doing with you now. So if this is something that you think your community could benefit from, or you think somebody could benefit from, this is something I'm also offering. So feel free to connect with me about that. Yeah, and whether it's online or it's in person, so we can also do that. We can put together a Zoom for your community, or if there's ability to I can just come by and meet the community in person. So very happy to do that. Mm-hmm. And that came from, those meetings came from conversations that I've had with people from those communities that said that, particularly it was after the elections in 2016 in the United States, and they said that there's a sense of wanting to do something, but something in their communities didn't click, like it didn't work. Some of them even felt like it was prohibitive or not good practice to be engaged in the world. And they just wanted to out that conversation. And I just want to frame, when we talk about social action or we talk about peace building and peacemaking, yes, we're called Zen Peacemakers International, but I will start by saying that I don't know what peacemaking is. So I don't have an agenda in terms of what the peace building process is. I'm not necessarily know what social action is. That's where the conversation starts from. There's a receptivity, right? There's a bearing witness to circumstances, and then there's a response. So, and I think in the US there was a sense, particularly after the election, from a lot of people that I spoke with, that social action means something about rallying and going to rallies and organizing like that, which is an amazing way to mobilize practice. But it's not the only way. So that's where the kind of the creative entrepreneurial side that Bernie really embodied can come to play. So this is one of the things that Zen Peacemaker is trying to encourage in the members. But this is really the basis of conversations that I have with those sanghas that feel a bit stuck in terms of what can a community do as a response, and that's wide open.
Yep.
Great. So, I just invite us to sit for maybe a minute, just take all of this in. Take a deep breath. Mm. You may be experiencing your heart right now. Maybe you're feeling very embodied. Your attention is in the body somewhere. It could be that your mind is stimulated with ideas or possibilities. It could be that there's a sense of excitement or maybe discomfort. Just let all of that just inform your experience.
But it does feel like the ball
I'll give an opportunity if there's any thing that anybody wants to either ask, or I also invite you if there's anybody who wants to dedicate this wonderful connection that I've been experiencing. feeling very grateful to be able to share this with all of you. So if you feel called to dedicate this connection and this energy to something, raise your hand and I'll call on you. Or if you just like to share something.
I know. And then there's also sort of, I still don't know.
Tom, please.
I would like to add the little dedication that I've heard from the Tibetan folk and from the Order of Inner Being. May the merit of our practice benefit all beings throughout time and space.
Thank you, Tom. Anyone else? All right. So, I will offer dedication, and I'll open up the mic. And if anybody just wants to say goodbye to the open mic, feel free to do that. I want to offer my gratitude and a sense of connection and curiosity, and this knowing of connection that's just happened here, and the karma of the connection that we created may benefit all peacemakers. It may benefit all people who are suffering, and may it accompany Bernie wherever you are, man. I dedicate that to your self-passage, and may it continue, benefit. Thank you all. So I'm going to unmute everyone right now. Great.
Thank you, Rami.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Be well.
Be
Bye.
well.
Thank you so much. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.